From a Montego Bay-based cable station to a lighting director at NBC Universal in New York City and a professorship at Fairfield University in Connecticut, also in the U.S. How have his roots in Farm Heights St. James helped to pave the way for a successful and inspiring journey across Jamaica and now in the U.S.? My guest is Professor Reginald Campbell, a veteran in the media field in Jamaica and the U.S. I am Archibald Gordon. This is Profile. Reginald Campbell, welcome to Profile.
Thank you for having me, Archie.
So you are a professor at Fairfield University in Connecticut in the United States and a lighting director at NBC Universal in New York City, also in the United States. And this is part of, a magnificent journey that's taken you all across Jamaica into the U.S. When you look at this kind of journey and you sort of think about, where you started, how do you feel?
Definitely a sense of accomplishment, right? From the earliest days down here in Montego Bay, Farm Heights, where I was born and raised, to this point, it's, I don't want to be bashful, but it's not a small feat. But what I realized in life is that, whatever men have done, men can do. So I just take that approach and keep moving forward.
And I want to talk a little bit about the early days in Farm Heights. But before you go, lighting director, for those of us in television, we may be more familiar with what that term means. But what exactly is a lighting director? What do you do?
Okay. So essentially, it's multifaceted. So before any program can be broadcast, right, we have to be able to see folks, right, and see them well. So the lighting director basically designs and helps to set the stage. Once the set is in place, we have stand-ins, we have people sit in positions, we have the desk, if there's a desk or a chair. And we basically decide, okay, this light goes here, that light goes there. What kind of lights work best for the scenery that we have? That's a rough explanation as to what we do.
And this takes place, you need this proper lighting no matter what kind in television. You've worked on a variety of different programs on NBC, which include what are some of the programs people might be familiar with?
Over the years, I've worked on a Rachel Maddow show, which is NBC's biggest show there. I've worked with Alex Witt. That's the daytime shows. Worked on... if you've watched NBC, you've pretty much watched the show I worked on from morning to night, based on the shifts that we have. Right now, my main project is NBC News Now, which is one of their latest sort of outfits that they've launched that goes online as well as on network television. So I've been on those early morning shows on NBC News Now.
And now, the context of Farm Heights to NBC is really interesting because this was not sort of a journey that you had in mind. Let's talk first about Farm Heights. This is a community those of us in Jamaica may know to be one of those communities with sort of volatile, a lot of crime and violence. But you've said that is not the kind of community you grew up in. How was it different?
Well, the farmers that I knew back in the 90s was a very family-oriented community. Fathers and mothers, parents were in the household at that point. I can remember one fond memory where on Sundays, maybe like twice or three times a month, there would be a movie truck that would come in the center of the town, I call it the town, up there in Farm Heights. And they'd block the streets off, and basically everyone would come out their houses and we'd bring our hassack or building blocks and sit in the middle of the street as a community, and we'd all like watch these movies being projected from the back of a truck. So it was very community-based, community-oriented community at that time in the 90s.
And your
Since, unfortunately.
And you say it's since changed. So you were in Jamaica up to about a couple of days ago, and how does it feel to come back to a community that's vastly different from the community that you grew up in?
If I'm being honest, it's a little bit unnerving, let's say, because the faces of the people that I see going past my house there in Mobile, in Farm Heights, going up and down is unlike what I'm used to. There's a lot more depravity, right? People seem like they're moving around aimlessly a lot. Oftentimes the young people, and that sort of scenery is very unsettling, to say the least. Things have just changed drastically down there.
And you said this, as you're saying right there, a drastic change from how you grew up, especially where the family life was concerned. A small, close-knit family, your mother, your father, your sister, the four of you. What was it like growing up in the family? Because you say you learned a lot of lessons from your parents about the value of hard work.
Yeah, man. My late father, Mr. Reginald Campbell Sr., passed away in 2021. He was the stalwart, He was the boss in the household, to say the least. My mother was the balance keeper. My sister, and I, troublemakers, she's 10 years older than I am. But we were all, church going people. Sunday morning, everybody gets up, says prayers, eat our breakfast, and we're off to church. One of the fun things I can remember that we did, I think probably every Jamaican household at some point had this routine of rice and peas in the evenings on a Sunday, rice and peas and chicken on a Saturday, pumpkin soup or chicken foot soup, so it was very much that sort of environment that I was brought up in, very routine, very disciplined. If I stepped out of line as a young man, my father was there to, kind of, put me back in place, for want of a better term. So yeah, it was just nothing but fond memories for the most part, growing up there.
And he was a huge sort of figure as well, not just in your life, but also in your school life when you went to Barracks Road Primary, because he was a much older man as well. And, that caused people, especially young children, to, sort of ask you a particular kind of question. What were they saying? What were they asking?
Well, one of the things that I don't like to recall, but I'll do for you, Archie, is the fact that they would often ask me if he's my grandfather, because my dad had me when he was 45 years old. And a lot of the other parents around were very much younger. And so when daddy would come and come check up on me or pick me up or anything, my classmates would be snickering or whatever. And then later on they'd ask me, hey, grandfather, that's in the early days before I had to say, well, that's my father, And they used to tease me a lot on that. But, young men do what young men do at Barracks Road, I guess.
I know from Barracks Road, you went to Anchovy High School, but I'm going to talk about Anchovy High School on the other side of the break. So we're going to take a break right now on Profile. My guest is Professor Reginald Campbell. He's from Fairfield University in Connecticut in the U.S., and he's also a lighting director at NBC Universal in New York City, and he's from right here in Jamaica, Farm Heights in St. James. We're back with you on the other side of these messages. Welcome back to Profile. My guest is Professor Reginald Campbell. He is a professor at Fairfield University in Connecticut in the United States, and also a lighting director at NBC Universal in New York City. And we've been talking about his early days in Farm Heights, St. James, and so far we've, kind of covered the upbringing, and we're moving on to the high school days now, which is in Anchovy High in St. James as well. And I wanted to talk about that sort of in the context of how different that was as an experience in primary school.
Anchovy. You know what? The thing is that I would like to assume that most high schools there in Jamaica are not, a walk in the park is not a cakewalk, because that's a period of our lives when we face a lot of challenges. Growing up as young people generally, not just boys. So from primary school, it was I got the teasing and all that sort of stuff. But then here you are in high school, and Anchovy is in the rural areas of St. James, up in the mountains there, and so I didn't really want to attend that school, but the reality of it is that that's where I went. So my experience there was sort of mixed for the most part. A lot of good memories there, but also a lot of challenging experiences also. At that time, Anchovy was, known for a lot of, how can I put this? A lot of challenging situations, right? I often share a darker side of an experience that I had there when that was the first time I actually saw a firearm, a gun, that was at the school. The school had a lot of, issues, fighting. We used to call them wars. So it was a 2-shift school, and, young men, D-Cup players would be fighting other folks, and not just the D-Cup, but just boys in general, and females as well. So in one of my classes, one of my classmates brought in a firearm. It was actually my mechanic class, because there at Anchovy, at that time, you're able to take a skill. And the skill I chose was mechanic. So in my mechanic class, one of my classmates brought in a firearm, and he was passing it around so that we could all, get a feel in our ignorance at that time. So that was, just to paint a picture of this sort of environment that was at that institution at that point in time. I'm sure they've improved since then, but it was a pretty tough school at one point.
And also tough for you academically as well. You leave Anchovy, do not get all of the subjects that you wanted to get. You did business subjects, but didn't get math and English. And then you had to sort of decide what was the road ahead. And you decided first heart. And then went on to work at a credit union. So how then did all of this? Because we hear mechanic work, we hear business, but then you end up in media. How do you end up in media?
All right. So yes, you're correct, Archie. I did graduate from Anchovy with accounting, principal of business, and office procedure. No math, no English. So that posed a challenge because, in Jamaica, I presume it's still the same, where you need those 5 subjects to get a good job. So because I didn't have all 5, I ended up going into the HEART program, which then led to the Jamaica Police Credit Union, which I worked at for about a year. I then saw a commercial on the local Montego Bay cable channel, and they were advertising for an opportunity to work in one of those said cable stations. They wanted a cameraman. They were looking for cameramen. So
and you had never done camera work before? Never?
Never. Not at all. It just seemed exciting to me at the time. I had no idea, but I was just curious and just wanted a change. And that's why I went down there and interviewed for the job with no experience. But they took me on, trained me for a little bit, very basic training. And then we were off. We were off to the races.
What did your parents say? I'm curious, from the perspective that you get your good job. You're dressing up every day, you're going to work, working at credit union, and you then tell them, I'm going to leave the job I have, good job to go do something I have no experience doing whatsoever for some station, a local station. What did they say?
Well, it was mixed reactions, right? Because my dad was familiar with the station because they often played like African movies and things. So he was aware of that particular station. My mother wasn't so much excited. She was like, "What are you talking about? You want to be a cameraman? You have a nice job. You're working at this place." And she liked seeing me in the tie and the dress shirt and all that kind of thing. So she wasn't the happiest, but I made up my mind and I said, you know what, this is the direction I want to go in. And they kind of supported me eventually. Well, she decided to support me eventually. And I was just off the races.
And that created quite a journey. So not only working at that station, working at multiple stations in Montego Bay, moving on to get formal training at the Creative Production and Training Center (CPTC) in Kingston, and then going on, through your determination, your links, and your enthusiasm to work at CVM TV. So you have what is conceivably the dream job. For those of us in journalism, start out at the local level, move to the national level. Why did you decide to leave the people them work and decide that, overseas was my next step?
Well, sometimes they say, God works in mysterious ways. And I think a little birdie one day at work came into my ear. And the little birdie said something that was not very encouraging in the moment. And I took it upon myself that I'm going to prove this person wrong based on what they said to me.
They say you're going to be here forever. You're going to retire here.
Yes, I would stay there and get old and gray. And that sort of comment sort of lit a fire in my mind and then, set me on this journey of, okay, what's the next step? Right? What else can I do? So I started to search. I was looking around for colleges that I can actually learn about production, television production. I didn't find any in Jamaica. So I started to look around the world. I almost ended up in India because they had a really great program based on my research in Mumbai. And I just sat back and I said, I think India's a little bit too far for my mom and all that, my dad, my family generally. And I was like, all right, let me reorient myself and look closer afield. And I started to look in the US for institutions to go to that would have a program that would best suit my interests.
And that's how you ended up in the US. We have to take a break though on Profile. I want to talk about that because that, you when you're recalling the journey, it's easy to forget how many sort of hurdles you have to surmount to get where you have to get to. Because even that part of the journey has hurdles as well. But we're going to take a break on Profile. My guest is Professor Reginald Campbell. He's from Fairfield University in Connecticut in the US. I should say he's from Farm Heights in St. James and is now at Fairfield University in Connecticut in the US, and he's also a lighting director at NBC Universal in New York City. Stick around, we're back after these messages. Welcome back to Profile. My guest is Professor Reginald Campbell from Farm Heights in St. James and now at Fairfield University in Connecticut in the US, and also a lighting director at NBC Universal in New York City. And NBC is one of the big 3 free-to-air stations in the United States. It's a big deal, and we're happy to have him on the program. And we're talking a little bit about his journey, the educational part of his journey now. You decided you're going to go to the United States, and at the end of that journey, I'll summarize to say you got a Master of Fine Arts in TV production and a Bachelor in documentary film production, but took a lot to get there. What were some of the major challenges?
Well, off the bat, what I can say, Archie, is that as an international student, finances was the major issue. But what I found out was that if you do your work well, you can make the dean's list in various colleges here, Brooklyn College being one, the one I attended. And with the dean's list, there's a small check that comes along with it, and that helps a great deal. My girlfriend at the time, now my wife, she was there as well. She was one of the main reasons why I even decided to study in the US instead of going to Mumbai, India. And a few good Samaritans also helped me along the way. Some professors stepped up that I was close to while I was studying, and really, made a difference in my tuition. So that was like the major thing. Other things were, just typical culture shocks, like the idea of race, right, and how that plays out. So, but you take the blows, and you take it all in stride. I chalk negative things up to experience, and then I just keep going forward.
Where does that come from? That let's move forward. Let's get on with it.
Well, my dad was a postman for many years, 33 years at the post office there at Montego Bay. And that man was the epitome of discipline and hard work. Regardless, rain or fall, breeze or blow, whatever, right? He's doing what needs to be done. And I think one of the things I learned from him and my mother is an amazing work ethic. And I think I just used Miss Catherine, affectionately called Miss Dottie, my mom, her work ethic, my father's discipline, and just combined them and applied it to whatever I'm doing. So whether it's TV, whether it's in academia, life in general, it's just keep going forward. Let's keep going forward. Life has a way of working out.
And this job requires a lot of that as well, because it's a lot of long hours.
In TV?
Yes.
Yeah. Undoubtedly, it takes a toll. So you have to be, ready to take things on head on, especially when the challenges occur. Like in broadcast television here, it's very high stress because things are happening on the fly and the show keeps going on, right? So it's all about how do you troubleshoot, how do you fix an issue and keep moving forward. Even with my position as lighting, you can have, I'll give you a quick scenario. You can have your host on set, you have a guest coming up on the next block, right? You have to make sure that your lighting cues are all set for that position, right? If there's an issue, then you have to communicate quickly to your director, let them know, so we can see how we can best fix that issue on the fly within, 2-3 minute break.
Without interrupting the show at all, because you don't want your host to walk into a spot where no one can see them or see them. It's just possible. Or see their face clearly or any of that. That you will lose your work for.
This is, you get into some trouble. You hear some words you probably rather not hear in situations like that, yes. But what we try to do is, in broadcast, we try to have a setup time so we can test all lights, test the sound, test your cameras and everything to make sure that you can have a good show.
I wonder the extent to which all of the experiences in Jamaica sort of help situate you and make you better at the job in the US. How did Jamaica help all of that? All of these sorts of different experiences.
Yeah, 100%. Being as they used to call us, cameraman. When I was in Mobile, you're just a cameraman, right? Until when I moved to Kingston and became a videographer, and having that experience. Then coming to the US, like one of my first television jobs here wasn't NBC, it was actually News 12, Brooklyn and Bronx. And that was the job that was most aligned or closely aligned, I should say, to what I did in Jamaica. So they call it photojournalist, where in Jamaica, you're known as a videographer. So you get a camera, you get some gear, and a vehicle, and they send you out to get a story. So I think my job there in Jamaica really set me up in terms of getting me ready and prepared for what I would definitely experience here. It's just a different level of the same thing, in my opinion.
But you have to, but you out here, you have to learn to do everything. So those lessons you also have to learn are very useful when you go overseas. So we have
100%.
about, less than 2 minutes left, and we've spent a lot of time talking about work. So what is next, and what is fun outside of work?
Outside of work, what do? I tend to travel, hence Jamaica. I just came back from Ghana in West Africa. Tennis is one of my things that I do. Incidentally, that was because my mom didn't want me to play football, so I ended up in tennis. So just to free my mind, I hike a lot, which is one of the reasons I moved to Connecticut. There's a lot of mountain ranges, can really get out and explore. So I just try to get away from technology when I'm not working.
What is next? What do you want to do next?
What I want to do next? You remember when we talked about business, right? Delving a bit more into real estate business. That's the next chapter. But, more on that.
I love more on that. That sounds like a television throw. But we're going to have to leave it right there. Thank you so much, Professor Reginald Campbell, for joining us on Profile. Really, really appreciate you sharing your story and your different experiences with us.
Thanks for having me, Archie. Appreciate it.
And thank you at home for watching as well. I'm Archibald Gordon. See you next time.